Welcome everybody to Incredible Display. This is a deck profile series where we highlight some of the really cool decks that were very close to making top cuts. I'm Constantine, Pringlesman123 on Discord, and today I'm joined by Gary Surridge, who got 14th place with his Air Hagakure 2 deck at the Chelmsford Regional. So, gotta ask, going into this event, what is it that made you pick Toru Hagakure for the event?
I've been to a few events, and I tend to try to play off-meta sort of decks. So, I've played Shishiwakamuru, and I've played Shin, and I take these sort of meme type decks. I was kind of irritated by Devil Jin personally, and I felt like Toru 2 was almost the anti-Devil Jin. They put cards into their card pool, they ignore the checks, but then I say, actually, put it back into your hand and check properly. So I felt that because we were going to come up against so many Devil Jins, that Toru would be sort of a great shout into it. Plus, I'm really enjoying Sweeping Daggers at the minute, so I felt like that was a good deck to sort of do both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the response commit pretty much just completely negates Devil Jin's response once per turn, so makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And so moving on with, what aside from being really good into Devil Jin, what is the game plan for this list? What does it look like on the winning turn for Toru? What exactly is our what's the attack string that's killing them?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, as most people know, Walk the Dog is extremely strong. That's why it's the money maker in a minute. So it's kind of leading into that really. So the Vast Hybrids are going to be there to sort of shut down their assets, shut down any sort of key foundations they're going to maybe like seal or stop anything that I'm going to be doing. So I tend to sort of lead maybe with that. My sort of draw power, I use sort of Electric Moth or sort of Water Dogs, to get it. So if I can sort of go from Vast Hybrid into an Electric Moth, I possibly will then play an Invisible Infiltration. Reason being, this is a really cool card. It allows you to, even if you commit something, one of the enhancers on it allows you to then remove that foundation, then rebuild it after. So you essentially sort of skip progressive. So I sort of really like the interaction. So I kind of string that way, and then Walk the Dog's going to be the killer, really. I did try Survey Corps Teamwork, and I put like a cheeky one of in my deck to sort of like string a couple of attacks from that. But yeah, I didn't really feel that card was super powerful. So it tend to be Vast Hybrid, Walk the Dog, and Invisible Infiltration tend to be the sort of good ones there. And actually, I was very surprised by Shoulder Toss because with Reluctant Role Model, the sort of foundation that allows you to -1 damage, I could chuck that Shoulder Toss in. If people block it, great, they're still taking half damage, and then I'm drawing a card and readying a foundation. So sometimes if I know they're not going to block it, I Reluctant Role Model it myself, so it goes down to 4 damage. And then I get to draw and then ready something. So it's just really good into things like Rifle Arm and stuff like that I might have used on my first attack. So it's a really good little string there as well.
Yeah, that's a really cool synergy. I didn't notice that with Shoulder Toss. I guess a question I had about this was about Invisible Infiltration, but I guess to Shoulder Toss as well. Did some of your turn 2 poke turns kind of look like a Invisible Infiltration or Shoulder Toss, and you would just Rifle Arm it to make it a little bit more awkward for them to block because you knew you could reuse the Rifle Arm defensively?
Absolutely, yeah. So, I would probably, as I said, most of the time I try to leave with Vast Hybrid. It's always a good card. If not, Sweeping Daggers or something like that. But yeah, because Sweeping Daggers is a 5 mid for 4, and I'd probably get to pull something out of their deck to sort of do something. Rifle Arm that. It's now at 8 for whatever damage I've added to it based on whatever attack I've managed to grab out. And then I'll play like Invisible Infiltration or Shoulder Toss, and then basically, get to re-ready that Rifle Arm, either to use it again or defensive turn on the sort of swing back. So yeah, it's a really good sort of progressive, sort of like counter progressive. It's interesting interactions.
Yeah, making it easier to play your strings. That makes sense. I also wanted to ask with Invisible Infiltration, how often were you throwing it out versus holding it in your hand as a block? Because, as you know, Hagakure is the character that gets to use the Breaker 2 on this card.
Yeah. So I tend to be kind of more of an aggro sort of player. So I've got a lot of minus speed hate in Turu in my sort of foundation lineup. So I tend to actually play it more aggressively. I think I maybe kept it in my hand once or twice when I was going against sort of a chaos deck. I faced Mitchell, for example, and obviously, the typical chaos thing of they essentially ignore progressive as well. They play this and +2 to your next check, etc. So it was great to be able to play the breaker plus the Turu, which shut down a lot of the chaos decks I played against. So yeah, that was really good. So I tend to, but being a more of aggressive player, I probably just played it just a string.
That makes sense. And then you mentioned it before about Sweeping Daggers just being a good one. I'm curious, what were some of the best things that you got to steal with it during the event? Like what enhancers were like really nuts for it?
So I played one of my locals, and Richard, he was playing Nick Reagan basically, and ended up finishing 5th, I think, overall. And my game against him, we drew, and basically I think one of the interactions was True 100. So obviously we were playing sort of a semi-defensive game. We both had quite a few foundations at that point. So Sweeping Daggers essentially just stole True 100, slapped on all that extra speed and damage. It just came in at nuts. I think he had like 11 foundations or something crazy. So that just went off. So that was a really fun interaction. And I played against a Ravagers of War deck as well, I think, and managed to take one of those out. And then, obviously, Ravagers of War is a fun card with Sweeping Daggers. Just, discard momentum, just sacrifice, discard a card. So, so there's some really cool little cards there. Sometimes it did nothing, which I feel was the joy of the card. There were some decks that were so specific to their own decks, like maybe they had tech keywords or maybe they had, weapon keywords or whatever it may be. And I think I made a mistake one time of when I was like, oh, cool, they got Walk the Dog. And then I got rid of their Walk the Dog, thinking, oh, yeah, great, I'm going to get this draw and stun. And then it was only when I was like, oh, no, I just, I was so exhausted at that point. I was like, oh, crap, no, I can't actually use the Walk the Dog because it says specifically if a card named Walk the Dog. So unfortunately it's called Sweeping Daggers. So I kind of like, I knew that interaction. I just, at the time I got a bit hyper excited because I had a Walk the Dog in my hand as well. I was like, oh cool, I can do this and then play this other Walk the Dog, and my head just kind of went a bit. But I would say the True 100 was a really cool little card to sort of take out.
Yeah, stealing the big difficulty moves, slapping it on a forward, it does, it's just pretty good, right?
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, it's great fun.
And then continuing on some questions about the attack lineup, as Walk the Dog was our finisher, I was a little curious if there was ever any game states where you kind of bricked on it, because when I think of Walk the Dog, I think of maybe like Himiko Toga 3, who very easily will stun the opponent out. And looking at this list, it seems aside from the Shoulder Toss and the Chimera Kraken, most of the way you're going to stun your opponent out is either through your breakers or Hagakure making their checks bad, right? And so I was just curious if Walk the Dog ever bricked for you as like an 8 diff or whatever.
Not really. I mean, it's the sort of card I'm more than happy to play on a 7 or 6 or 7 anyway. Like, I feel like most people you play in the game are going to have at least 2 foundations tapped before it comes back to you. I feel Walk the Dog is so strong that I would quite happily play as my first stack on a 6. It's still a 6 low for 6. It's still a draw. It's still a stun. So I feel I never really struggled too much. And depending on the deck as well, because obviously I was quite lucky that I did face a few Chaos decks, I guess, I faced an Order deck as well, where they have Patchwork Baby. And again, that ended up working so well for me as Sweeping Daggers. Like, if I knew they were playing Patchwork Baby, that would be my kill shot. Right, I have got my momentum. I'm playing Sweeping Daggers. I'm taking out the Patchwork Baby. I'm now getting stun 2, powerful 3, EX 3, +1 damage for each keyword, which I've got a lot of different keywords at that point. Lots of extra speed. So yeah, that was kind of like the backup plan. But I didn't tend to brick with Walk the Dog. I think that's why I added Survey Corps Teamwork in the end. I only did, as I said, I built this deck like a couple of days before I went to regionals. I managed to chuck in a couple of games on the Thursday before. And yeah, Survey Course was kind of the idea that I could then string smaller attacks if all the dogs sort of bricked. But yeah, you are right. There is a situation, if I'm sitting there with 3 water dogs in my hand, it's not a great situation. But yeah, sometimes just play through it.
Yeah. So, it's a card game. Obviously, we'll have some bad draws sometimes. And then I guess my final question for the attacks was just, we've kind of already talked a little bit about it with teamwork, but I'm curious if you would bump up any of your 2x or 1x attacks, so like more teamworks, more violent animus shots, more shoulder tosses.
Yeah, so obviously, because I built this very last minute, I suffer from extreme anxiety, like the joys of being neurodivergent, and so I wasn't even going to come to regionals, even though I paid for the Airbnb months ago. So I generally wasn't even going to enter a tournament. I was going to come up and just watch and just chat. And it was only a couple of days before that I decided to build this deck. And yeah, I've definitely, after actually playing at regionals, actually playing different decks now. I feel like there's definitely some changes I've make. So for example, shoulder toss went up to 3. Like that interaction with reluctant role model, I didn't realize till halfway through probably the day that I was like, oh, cool. Like I didn't realize, I didn't really think of it. So I upped that to a 3. I violent animus shop again up to a 3 because I found it really sort of strong because a lot of people playing that sort of is it Sean Gilmore? Sean the
backup that like +2 to your check, right?
+2, yeah, exactly. So it's just nice to get rid of that and then gain flash and draw a card. So so that's kind of nice as well. But yeah, I definitely felt that shoulder toss definitely went up, and so did violent animus to a 3, and I got rid of survey teamwork. And yeah, so that's sort of where I went from there.
Gotcha. And so that was pretty much all my questions with the attacks. So I guess kind of like moving on to the assets and actions. At least to me, this looks like a lot of the bread and butter. These are like very good cards in the format. You're going to see these cards in a lot of decks that are on symbol for them with, VME, Cape of No Return, Genkais, Airy Smiles. Same sort of question as the attacks. Like, did any of those move up, move down in a number of cards?
Yeah, absolutely. So no, they pretty much stayed the same, really. I felt like I had a good balance of them. VME is obviously very strong. It's one of the cards that could probably get a rat at some point, almost like a Knots Flask sort of treatment with just maybe an unique potentially, or something. It's a very strong card, so I think most decks should have at least 1. I feel 2 is just it's nice if I see 1, nice if not. Cape of No Return. It's okay. Like I feel like, but I would probably. I think what I've done with my new deck is actually I got rid of Cape. I put it into my sideboard and I added an extra cheerleader. I just felt cheerleader was a lot more powerful. So for me, that just felt a little bit better. Like the there's so much blitzes now. Yeah, there's so much blitzes now that some attacks just come in huge before I even get a chance to do anything or interact. And when you play against characters that can then maybe just flash it or skip enhanced steps or, can then enhance, remove your asset. There's so many ways that they can just kill your assets before you even get a chance to actually do the enhance. That having cheerleader for me just felt a bit stronger. Flashing their attack, they can't do any blitzes. And just go from there. So Cape was probably a bit weak. Genkai's Guidance just does its thing. It's if you want to play aggro, just form it and discard your opponent's hand, just so so you can obviously string a bit quicker. And Airy Smiles, I've added 3 of those now. So yeah, I just felt that was a really strong card. Being able to just obviously cancel their attack strings. There's a lot of characters like, you've got things like Pony and Devil Jin and stuff like that like to sort of string out. So yeah, Airy Smiles is definitely one card that I added an extra one. It's a very strong card.
Yeah, it all makes sense. And then if you don't have anything else you want to say about the assets or actions, we're just moving on to the foundations. I kind of leave this as like a large chunk because obviously there's so many different foundations, but really any standout stuff you want to talk about that we haven't already mentioned? Because I'm seeing like a lot of speed hate in the foundations currently.
Yeah, that was my whole idea, really. I feel like Turu just kind of does the thing of the more you build, the better my attacks become. So, I don't really worry about people building too much. The big standout for me was Jin's parry. The amount of people playing Besiege and then thinking, oh, I'm going to play Besiege at the end of a string. And seeing me only holding one card in my hand, they're like, oh cool, he's never going to block it because he needs a 3+, and he's got 3 cards in his card pool. It's going to be impossible to block. Like, playing that card, ignoring progressive, and blocking a Besiege, which is coming in at like stupid damage because there's a lot of characters that can just pump so much on it now. That for me was a really standout card for the day. So I really enjoyed that. What else we got here? So Run Idiot, the like gaining health. I felt that was a really neat interaction with Aaron's sidestep. So you sort of flip Aaron's sidestep, you tap Subdual Technique, Run Idiot. So you get that -4 speed, and then you gain a health and draw a card. It's a pretty sweet little deal.
Yeah.
I like the interaction there. Again, Cheerleader. I went to a third one. I really love this card. I think Flash in this format is so important. Like, just skipping all of that blitzing, skipping, anything basically that they potentially want to do. That really helped, especially when I went up against Chaos deck, which played Determined Advance. I was like, yeah, cool, Flash. Like, you're not getting that momentum. You're not doing anything else. Yeah. So it's really neat interaction against a lot of cards, true 100s and all that sort of thing. And so I really enjoyed that.
I do have a quick question about the Cheerleader. Just again, because it's Hagakure, I'm curious if you ever used the first form on the card, or it was strictly just for the usual part of it, give a move Flash.
Yeah, no, it was definitely the Flash. I feel like it's very strong in this meta. I feel like because I've only really been playing for like a year and a half. So when I first started, I was around sort of set 4. But even back then, I felt like the game was slightly slower, and so you probably could flip that. Both players build, but I feel now in this current format, just by turn 2, most people have 8 or 9 foundations anyway. So it's only playable if your rival has 8 or fewer. So I feel like I was never in a situation where it was that beneficial anyway. But the Flash being so strong on like sort of modern attacks is just it's definitely the key for that card.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. I did have one. If you sorry, just jumping into with the
go for it.
One on the foundation Subdual Technique stood out to me just because I hadn't seen this card before. I'm pretty ignorant on the water attuned foundations.
Yeah, absolutely. So Subdual Technique is really, I generally do love this card. Because obviously 2 of my favorite cards in this deck are sort of Vast Hybrid and Subdual. Like Vast Hybrid just kills their assets, kills their foundations for the turn, and then Subdual Technique almost does a similar thing. So a great sort of thing I would do is maybe play Vast Hybrid, commit their asset, commit and freeze one of their foundations. Rifle arm it, so it gets ridiculous speed, so it's a 7 speed for 6. Turu, probably a +2. If you got 4 foundations, it's +2 to block mod. It's coming in at 9, so essentially block. So unless they're reducing the speed, it's really hard to block, right? Mm-hmm. And then obviously Subdual basically says, well, now with Vast Hybrid just dealt damage to you, I'm now going to freeze something else on your stage. Yeah. So yeah, it was really good. So that kind of, again, being quite an aggressive player, it's nice that if I can't kill them, I can freeze them out. So on my turn, on their attack turn, I don't really have to defend as much because they've got most of their stuff frozen. Mm-hmm. So Subdual Technique is really good, and the cost of it's really cheap. It's just a flip cost, right? So I feel like it's a really sort of neat interaction with that. But yeah, that's a good card. I probably do want 4 in my deck if I can squeeze it in somehow.
Hmm. Yeah, even just its stats looked good, even before we talk about the response rate. 1 diff, 2 low block, 5 check. Not really a big cost in that one. Exactly.
I was going to say the other outlier in here for me was Web of Blades. So I've gone to a 2 in my current iteration. So that card. So basically, there's obviously in the meta, there's a lot of damage reduction currently, like a hell of a lot. Especially when you come to things like Grogs and stuff like that, or Knots Flask, or whatever it may be. The Weather Blades basically just says that everything just goes back to almost its same stats. Yeah, so you want to reduce the damage by 3, cool. It goes back by +2. You want to reduce the speed. You want a nice try my speed, and it goes back up. Because Turu doesn't really put stats on things. It's easy for people to reduce the stuff. So Weather Blades was a really clean card because all my attacks were most of the time were going to be under. If they were to reduce speed or damage, it would have been under. I haven't really got many ways of boosting it. So Weather Blades was a really great card that basically just kind of said, yeah, I ignore all your damage reduction and speed reduction to an extent. So that was a really good card that I felt it's kind of underutilized in a lot of decks. I feel like a lot of decks could probably do with having like at least 2 Weather Blades in it at the minute.
Yeah, definitely against the damage reduction, and at least with Hagakure, she's giving fake speed, so like you're fighting over speed, but in a different way than them, right? So your Weather Blades is even better in her.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really good. So block mod, and it goes back to its speed pretty much.
Was there any other foundations you want to talk about or point out, or?
So I mentioned obviously Reluctant Role Model. So I've upped the amount of that. So I think I had 2. So I've got 2 in the one that I took to regionals. I've upped that now pretty much to 4 just because of the shoulder toss interaction. Being able to draw a card and ready my stage just sounds, it is very strong. There's a lot of there's a lot of use to it. Plus, if I don't want to do that, then I just have more damage reduction for the opponent. So I feel Reluctant Role Model and Shoulder Toss is definitely a really sort of neat interaction, which is unusual for you to actually reduce your own damage. So I feel like that's a really cool interaction. And I feel like the other card probably is it's Moth Monster. So I wasn't too sure about putting it in originally. When I spoke to Rich, he was like, it's probably worth just putting extra rifle arms in and nice tries. At least I do some stuff. But the one thing I was lacking in this deck was the sort of I feel like it's underutilized is having the 6 checks. I feel like a lot of people kind of blindside to them. They'll put their 4 checks and they'll put their 5 checks, and I feel like having those 6s really sort of boosts or makes your deck feel a bit more comfortable, especially when it's got a really cool enhance of basically -2 speed. Yeah, fine, that's just very standard. But if you've taken damage, it's -3. So if I can sort of DR and freeze them out and reduce the damage or even half block something, so again, Invisible Infiltration will probably half block most attacks or fully block, then I can then use Moth Monster in the future one, and it kind of stacks up. So I feel like having that 6 in the corner makes Moth Monster a hell of a strong card for me. And I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, sometimes the way you win a game is just, I need to check a 6 here. And if you don't have it in your deck, you're never going to do that. So it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. And so I'm down to move on to the sideboard if you are, and just talk about, usually what I ask is, when would you side the cards in your sideboard in, and what matchups would that be for, and what would you typically cut for those cards? So obviously 10 cards in the sideboard, so there's a lot to talk about here, but
yeah, absolutely. So again, Weather Blades that was kind of almost went in my deck automatically after every game. So what I took out for that was Incompatible Quirks. It's I like Incompatible Quirks, good card. Again, kind of allows me to sort of string. But I didn't see it enough, and I have so much speed hate anyway. So automatically Weather Blades go in just because there was a lot of speed reduction, DR reduction. Especially when I played against the Mitchells that have like a million VMEs on stage. Weather Blades is a strong card. So I put that in automatically. I didn't really put many childlikes in, I'm going to be honest. I don't think I ever sided that in. I've got so much speed hate. It's probably something that I don't really need in my sideboard. So I didn't bother. Cheerleader. That went in probably against the sort of heavy hitters. So definitely went in against the two Mitchells I played for the second game, and it definitely went into against Richard's Nick Reagan deck. I just felt like, again, that flash just stopping all the blitz. There's so many cards now with blitz in these decks that basically say I can't do anything, and it's coming in so big that Cheerleader was a big card. And what I'd probably do is, so the weakest card, which I didn't talk about in the foundations, I found was Tusk Tooth Screw, which basically says once per turn, discard one card, draw one card. Because I'm not a brawler or a champion, I don't get to do the obviously response. But in my head, I was like, I need some more draw power. I never felt that card was very good. It kind of just took up space. So definitely Tusk Tooth Screw. Almost every single game, or every second game, obviously, those two would just come straight out of my deck. And what I'd probably do is put one Web of Blades in, and then my Cheerleader in, and then I'd have one spare card. Now that, depending on the deck I was playing, I'd then add an extra card. So if I was playing asset-heavy decks, I chuck another Vast Hybrid in, and then take out the Survey Corpse. The Tattered Costume I put in quite a lot. So there's obviously quite a lot of void decks running around, obviously with these sort of barrier shields and stuff like that. And then there's that almost irritating Kuema's task thing that obviously Mitchell can do so well, where they basically remove one, discard one, and then can just get rid of all your cards. Well, not all your cards, but one named card from your deck, and then they just get to draw a million of their cards. So Tattered Costume is really good. It's also got cancels a lot of keywords, right? So there's quite a few people that were playing Echoes, and it obviously cancels that. It cancels the powerfuls, it cancels the X's. It cancels quite a lot, and it allows me to draw a card. So I would quite often definitely against the two Mitchells, I put in Web of Blades, Cheerleader, two Tattards, and I took out. So I went lower attacks for that time, and I took Survey Corpse out, two Tusk Tooths, and Incompatible. When I went against Nick Reagan, again, put a Web of Blades. Actually, no, I didn't put a Web of Blades in that because Nick Reagan doesn't really do any reduction. What I did instead was, again, I put I put a Vast Hybrid in. I put Mikasa defeats the female Titan, two of those, and I think an extra Cheerleader. And again, I took out the Tusk Tooths, the Incompatible, and a Survey Corpse. For who else did I face? So I faced a Byaku, and Byaku is just a lot of health.
Yeah.
It's just a big chunk to go through, and it's kind of a slow burner. So I think actually that was the one deck that I added the Childlikes. Actually, now I remember. So that's the one time I did use the Childlikes, just because Byaku can do that ridiculous speed thing.
With his foundation.
Yeah, exactly. Where there's slap a load of speed and it comes in at 1 million. I don't really have anything to get rid of it from that perspective. I've got a lot of speed hate. So I put in two Childlikes, and I just basically straight swap for Tusk Tooths. And I didn't feel the need to really put anything else in against that. That game ended up on a draw because it was just long-winded. I suppose. So I played, two Mitchells. I played Mike's Ymir.
Yes,
yeah. So that I kind of lost word. Like basically, as I said, going into regional, I have anxiety anyway. So going to regional, I didn't really want to go. And then they kind of made me go on webcam. I said I really don't want to go on webcam. I will have an anxiety attack. And obviously, I had an anxiety attack, so I literally just froze. I completely forgot to use my character. So Mike, being a great player anyway, knows all the decks really well. I kind of did silly things like, I was just poking him, which was very stupid to do against Ymir anyway, because obviously the more you poke, the more health they can gain and destroy me. And then I completely forgot to use. Exactly, yeah. And I completely forgot to use my. So basically, I think he played a Lethal Slash on his third attack. Checked a Lethal Slash, had to tap like 3 or 4 things. I probably should have just turret there, right? And just bounce it back and check the top. I didn't. I just completely froze. Just kind of like just watched my death happen. Yeah, I just honestly it was I probably could have done a lot to that deck, so I probably would have maybe just built a lot more. Not poked. Kind of just get my defense set up. So get my Shobin's message down and breakers and things like that. Get my childlike appearances down potentially, just so I can then, when I do block and use my, say, invisible infiltration to breaker, I can then also commit something of theirs as well. But yeah, I mean, I probably never would have beat Mike anyway. He's a fantastic player. Deserves to be at the top. But yeah, again, just being on stream, it's a hell of a lot of pressure. But, I've got literally Levi standing behind me, directly over my shoulder. I've got the judge to the left of me. I've got the cameras on me. I've got all my pressure anyway. And for me, it was just, it was a bad experience. So I didn't really do much in that game. So that was the one on stream, and that looks probably a very pathetic excuse for playing Turo for me. But yeah, it is what it is. So two Mitchells, Ymir, Boyaku,
Nick, you said,
and Richard's Nick Fagan. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it was a really good day. I sort of, once I sort of calmed down after the webcam, it was lucky I kind of went into the game with Richard after the webcam, so at least it's a friendly face I knew, and I could sort of like get back into my headspace, so which was nice.
Yeah, sort of get back into your mojo. Yeah, obviously that sucks that happened for you, but at the very least, it sounds like you still had a pretty good experience overall with the, you're very close to topping with Hagakure, and I'm assuming you had some fun at the regional, just seeing, a bunch of people in the community.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There were some really cool decks there. I really liked Greg Moss's deck. He had like the sort of Elder Tuguro, that does sort of party blow up thing. That was cool to see. I didn't realize that was a thing until sort of I played it in one of the team's events, and I was like, oh wow, that's insane. That's really cool. It's like a really neat sort of interaction, how it kind of manipulates sort of a system that of the unique system, basically. Just kind of as a unique comes in, the other one goes out, and then you burn life because the Attack on Titan card. It's a really cool interaction. Yeah. I saw a Kenny Ackerman. That was one of the decks I was really fancy playing. I saw a Kenny Ackerman deck, which was really cool to see. I kind of like the character. I like the deck. So it was really cool to see that one.
I do want to jump in at least with the Elder Tuguro, just as a, very cool coincidence that, assuming me and Greg can schedule a time together, he is another person that I'm hoping to get on this series, because that Elder Tuguro deck does look really sweet, and it is a very different way of playing than we're used to, I think. And so, same sort of
absolutely,
thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. It was like he got 11th or something like that. But yeah,
yes,
Greg's again a great player. In fact, I would say Greg is probably the nicest player that we have in Europe by far. He's never going to be toxic, never going to be cheeky. He's always just really nice and chilled and warming. And for someone who does have a big anxiety at these sort of things, I always like speaking to Greg, because he's a very sort of calming presence. And he always has a very sort of nice deck designs. He always sort of thinks outside the box. I feel like a lot of like the things in Top Cuts were very sort of generic, right? They're kind of like, yeah, this is kind of what everyone's building to get in Top Cuts. The Mitchells, the Rodans, the Gragans, and the Devil Jins, the Emirs. They're all kind of the same. But Greg being able to do so well with such a cool, unique deck that sort of, focuses on a completely different, it's almost like an alt Wincon, right? It's just, It's very sort of clever that he's managed to see that and do it. And it's really cool.
Yeah. And then we've talked a lot. I want to kind of start winding this down. So I'm going to ask you the any shout outs you want to give. Obviously, we've been talking about some of the players you've already talked about, but, anyone else you want to mention, give a shout out to in your community or local store or
yeah, absolutely. Well, so yeah, I run a board game cafe. So I never was, the reason I got into this game is because Richard, his son really loved My Hero Academia. He played it. And I play with him in my board game groups. I play a lot of board games, want to do card games. And he needed somebody to sort of top the numbers up for locals. And this was like miles away. And eventually I sort of set up the local groups. And now we get sort of between 6 to 8. So we had 8 today at the championships earlier on, nice. Which is pretty decent for a European sort of like locals. So we tend to get sort of anywhere between 6 and 8 most weeks. So yeah, so my locals, I think actually you already spoke to Harry, because Harry's talking about Speaking to You. Again, he's one of my locals. He had Big Mouth. Harry always comes up with some really cool deck ideas as well. He played Shadoroki, the new one, Free, is it the one that steals characters at the champions and just absolutely dominated us all. So yeah, he always thinks outside the box as well, so he always plays really cool decks. Yash played a character basically named after himself, so Yasha. So the new sort of Critical Role Yasha. It's kind of like a worse grog, really, but he kind of went with the meme that, got similar names and
you have to play
just wanted to have fun. Yeah. He was top 4, not last regionals 4 by Aku on Air. So he's kind of already done the top cuts and he just wanted to have a bit more fun. So yeah, it was really cool. Cohen, he's young. He loves winning. So he tends to play a bit more of the meta out of our group. So he's always going to be playing the Chaos decks. And like, for example, he played the Devil Jin when he went to regionals. But Cohen's really lovely. His dad's incredible, Marcus. So I really like seeing them. So they've actually bonded more since it, because Marcus lives in America. So he does a lot of the American events. And Cohen obviously lives in the UK with his mum. But I introduced them to this game and they play it online now. So it's actually, like they've said multiple times, actually help them bond more because they can play online together, which is really good to see. So yeah, Cohen's really lovely. That's sort of like all my locals really. So Matt came up, he's very new to the game, but he loves just, trying out new decks. Like he played Botan today.
Oh, wow.
And it's just it's a fun deck. It's just, you discard a card every other turn, and it's really cool. And he just enjoys learning the game at the minute. So he's in that stage of just picking up a character, playing with it. So Matt came up as well.
Nice.
And yeah, he really enjoyed himself. So yeah, just shout out to all the locals really. I guess got a shout out for Jordan, who's kind of the scrub of the group really. He's top 64 in Europe technically, I guess, because we only get 64 players and he finished lower. But yeah, Jordan again, he's absolutely lovely. So just to all the locals. There's brilliant guys.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. It's always fun to the game is a ton of fun. Deck building is a ton of fun, but also can't ever forget the community. Like, we meet a bunch of awesome people in this community, make a ton of great friendships. So it's really awesome to hear.
Absolutely.
With that, we've covered the deck. I'm going to start signing off. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, comment your favorite thing about the air symbol. We're seeing more of those decks with this Hagakure deck and some other recent events. People have been posting air decks. So yeah, thanks for coming on and talk about your deck. And now it's time to say goodbye.
It's a pleasure. Well, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, no problem.
That was really good.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Peace and love.